Hello Europa Universalis players, my name's Riemann and today I want to do a bit of a different video. In the following 3-part series, I'm going to show you how I one-tag the world as Ryukyu. On the one hand, this will be like a mini let's play because I'll be showing you footage from my game and I'll be explaining what I'm doing and my thought process as I go along. On the other hand, it'll be like the content I normally produce because I'll edit out the boring, monotonous parts to keep things interesting, and I'll periodically use my progress in the game as a segue into what I'd hesitantly describe as the world conquest meta in EU4. These will be strategies and tips that run the gauntlet from army composition to idea groups to monarch point allocation. In essence, you could think of this series as a world conquest guide, and while this first video will be mostly detailing a Ryukyu specific setup, in the latter two videos I've gone out of my way to generalize my explanations to any sort of world conquest, or even if you're just looking to improve your blobbing game without trying to annex the entire planet. This might sound strange, but I want what I'm doing here to be as unimpressive as possible. Doing a world conquest of any sort in EU4 is certainly challenging, but really it just comes down to having the right mindset, having lots of experience, and possessing a thorough understanding of all the game's interlocking mechanics. I hope this series will inspire some people to take the plunge and try their own world conquests, and that they'll share these with the community. Without further ado, here's my opener for the Three Mountains achievement with no exploits in Europa Universalis 4. Before I unpause, there's several things that need to be taken care of. First is the trading situation. Ryukyu starts off with merchants transferring in Nippon and Canton, but this is highly inefficient. I switch them to be collecting in Hangzhou and Beijing. Next, I look to the estates. I seek the support of the clergy to bump their influence over 25 and take their admin points. The burghers don't have enough influence for me to get diplo points, so I settle for some cash. I take military points from the nobility and let their loyalty drop below 40 since I'm not going to be needing manpower for quite some time. After dealing with the estates, I set my focus to admin points and I seek to reorganize my forces. I delete all my galleys and queue up 2 more light ships. I also take the mission to create a proper fleet, as I'll be getting it without going out of my way, and I have no other pressing missions I'll be able to fulfill in the meantime. I set army maintenance to minimum since I won't be using them for decades. I also make my king, Shitatsu, a general and make him head the troops. He's an absolutely abysmal ruler at 111, and while he almost certainly won't die by the time I plan on abdicating him, I'll take any chance I can get that he'll die early, and it saves me from buying a general in a bit. Now I unpause the game for a few days so my merchant can make it to Beijing. Then I send my 2 light ships to protect trade in that node. In the coming years, I'll make 3 more light ships that will be sent to do the same thing. This will allow me to make quite a sizable amount of ducats from trade, which I'll let accumulate while I wait for my real goal, which is getting to Admin Tech 5. From timing this opener out many times, I know I'll get there sometime between 1458 and 1460 depending on the events I get. As I wait, I build 4 more cogs. I also grab Mil Tech 4, but save all the rest of my points for the future. Beyond this, it's important that I get a non-crappy heir sometime in the first 5 years. For whatever reason, I've never had a problem with this in over a dozen test games I've tried, and in this game I get Taikyu Sho who has skills of 542. Now I simply speed 5 for about a decade, pausing to respond to events where I always try to maximize my monarch points over other costs, and to take money from the merchants again in 1454. About 6 months before I'm going to get Admin 5, I pay for my troops and create 3 more units of infantry. Then I transport my army to Manila to take it from the natives. One of the quirks of EU4 is that all natives actually belong to a dummy nation that for some reason Paradox forgot to disable army tradition accrual on. This means that all natives you'll fight will have an army tradition from all the battles other natives have fought everywhere in the world. And one of the facts about army tradition is it's gained from every battle, and you'll get a bonus if you're on the losing side. And if you know anything about the natives in EU4, you'll know they do a lot of fighting and a lot of losing, meaning it's not uncommon to fight natives that have an army tradition of late game Prussia. This is the reason why it's necessary for me to get up to Mil Tech 4, because without it, it'd be really difficult to defeat the 7,000 natives in Manila. I completely wipe them out, then set my land maintenance back to 0. When I finally hit Admin 5, I grab Exploration as my first idea group, and use my reserve of Diplo points to buy the Colonist, which I immediately sent to Manila. Colonies are expensive, but I have a large war chest from accruing trade income for years, and I set my native policy to Repression, which triples the natural growth rate of my colony. After my colony is started, I set the game to speed 5 and again, wait. On November 11th, 1464, I pause as this is an important date, because it's exactly 20 years after I first started the game. The most important thing I do is get rid of Shitatsu. This improves my monarch point generation dramatically, which is important because I'll want every point I can get. Next, I grab things from the estates again. There's been an event that has increased the influence of the merchants, allowing me to wheel and deal to have more rewards than I could initially. After this, I change my national focus to Diplo points. These become the most important currency because I need to get 3 exploration ideas filled out and get up to Diplo Tech 7. It'll become obvious why I need this later, but for right now I prioritize picking up the 3 ideas first, before any techs, because ideas reduce tech cost, I'll get more of a neighbor bonus for techs later, and I'll get rid of that institution penalty. I'm going to be spawning the Renaissance, but before I do that, I need to let Manila finish. Once my colony hits 1,000 people, I send the colonists off to another province. For the rest of the century, I'll be colonizing places in the Philippines with the following 3 priorities. First, I'll always want to make my colonies adjacent to provinces I already own, so they can grow faster. Then I'll prioritize colonizing any provinces that I get a mission for, again so things can grow faster. Finally, I'll prioritize higher development provinces for more income, and I'll make a special push to colonize the provinces with a development greater than 12. For right now, that's Tondo in the north and Maguindanao in the south. I'll go into why 12 is an important number later in the video. Getting back to the present, as soon as Manila finishes, I full core it, statify it, and make it my capital. Again, I'll explain why I make it my capital later in the video. For right now, the important thing is that I can develop Manila to spawn the Renaissance. I've seen many other people try to develop Okinawa instead of Manila, but it's actually cheaper to develop the richer province in this case, even when it has an extra 15% dev cost modifier from being tropical. If you want to know more about why it's cheaper to develop this way, see my analysis of institutions, link in the description. The cost graphs look like this for Okinawa, and like this for Manila. Note that I got events that allowed me to push the burghers to be influential and loyal, reducing dev costs by 10%. The costs for developing them are 2374 and 2303 respectively, because even though Manila starts with 14 development, you can oftentimes get an event that ups it by 1 during the colonization process, which reduces the cost of getting the institution further. Developing the Philippines like this will also make colonialism easier later on. For now, I use only admin and military points to develop. As I'm waiting to get enough points, I splurge 50 Diplo into an explorer and peel off 3 light ships from collecting trade to go exploring. I have enough time to explore everything in range, but it's important that I at least explore west into the Indian Ocean and northeast around Kamchatka. I also take the opportunity to build a few more cogs up to my land force limit. After a bit of waiting, I managed to spawn the Renaissance, and I quickly embrace it very cheaply since Manila is the lion's share of my nation's development. I do a bit more waiting now until I get up to Diplo Tech 7 in 1482. At this point, the game really opens up and I have to juggle multiple strategic directives at the same time. First up is the Maldives. These islands are a necessary stepping stone for my next target, and they're isolated both diplomatically and geographically, which will be important in about a century. For right now, I explore the islands and evaluate their strength. They have much fewer troops than I do, but they have a higher military tech level, and I'll have to face the -2 for an amphibious landing. I tech up my military a bit and create a few more troops. Outnumbering them by almost 2 to 1, I no-CB them, shatter their forces, and siege them up. With a colonial range from Dip Tech 7, the 3rd exploration idea, and an advisor, I have just enough range to take their islands. While I'm dealing with the Maldives, I have my explorer reveal 2 important areas. The first is East Africa. As soon as he does, I create spy networks on 2 countries in the region. Once I get up to 50 network in one of the countries, I steal maps to the Horn of Africa so I can see what's going on. I also send my explorer to reveal the Northwest Pacific and then some land in Alaska. My reason for doing this will become clear soon. But first, I look to invading East Africa. Specifically, I want to target one of the Coptic provinces in the area. If you're following along at home, you should note this is the most variable part of the opener, in that it could be really easy, or you could have to wait for a while. There aren't any huge powerhouses in the region that will make it too difficult, and if you build up to your force limit, have parity in military tech, and are good at playing the diplomatic game, it shouldn't be too terrible. You only need 1 Coptic province to get your foot in the door, so look for the weakest nation you can attack. They could either be diplomatically isolated, or they could be getting dogpiled by everybody else in the region. One tip I have for situations like this is to mark all Coptic countries in the area as interesting by right-clicking their shield in the province screen and clicking the little star. Then, if you haven't already, set your message settings so you get a notification whenever they go to war. Go to the message settings, select all, select interesting, search for war, and select it so you get a pop-up whenever a war declaration occurs. This will ensure you can fully take advantage of a situation where somebody's getting dogpiled. A lot of times I find the weak link is Medri Bari, whose province of Masawa is conveniently located on the coast of the Red Sea. That's what happened again in this game, where they were only allied to one other country. Even though the two of them combined had slightly more troops than I did, the AI has a lot of trouble grouping up to attack if your stack alone is bigger than any of their stacks alone. Their troops just ran off and let me siege down their capital, giving me enough war score to get the province I needed. Now, it should be noted that you don't necessarily have to do this by 1500. You can continue building up your power in the Philippines if you don't spot an opening, and you shouldn't feel too bad if you have to wait a few years or even a decade or two. However, you don't want to wait too long, because once you do get a Coptic province, you'll get a decision to freely convert, unlocking a lot of potential benefits. It'll allow you to get actual alliances and royal marriages with Christian countries. It'll also allow you to pick 1 or 2 Coptic bonuses right off the bat, and I recommend core creation cost and missionary strength. It'll also allow you to start converting your provinces, which shouldn't be too hard considering they're animist. The final part of this opener deals with getting the colonialism institution. This is where a lot of the effort required in this strategy up to this point pays off, because I've actually ticked all the boxes to get colonialism to spawn. Here are the conditions. First off, the Philippines counts as being in Asia. Next, the is island check is a little bit weird. You might think this checks islands based on their geographic definition in real life, i.e. a body of land surrounded by water. It doesn't. An island for the purposes of this check is an island of only a single province. This means places like Japan, Iceland, and the Philippines are not islands, while our previous capital of Okinawa is. Next, there are only 3 types of provinces this can spawn in: a province with a center of trade, a capital, or a province with a development of 12 or greater. This is why I made a push for getting the other 12 development provinces into the Philippines, as I'm fairly certain each one you have makes the institution more likely to spawn. The next check is the is in capital area. Again, this one might be confusing because EU4 has specific designations of areas and even has a map mode to show them, but this isn't what the line of code checks for. Rather, it checks if the province has a land connection to the capital. This is why it was important for me to move the capital from Okinawa to the Philippines. The final check is if the owner has the quest for the New World idea from exploration, which I do, and if they have discovered a province in the New World. Australia is a colonial region, but it doesn't count as a New World, but Alaska does, which is why I made a push for discovering a province there. The game rolls to spawn colonialism once per year, and you might have to wait a few years to get it. Note that Spain and Portugal can also try to get it, but from my analysis of institutions video, I found that they usually only get it about 8 years after 1500, giving you ample opportunities to snatch it. The benefits for getting the origin of colonialism are numerous. You get 300 monarch points, you delay Europeans, and you won't have to develop the institution yourself, saving you time and effort. If you can pull this opener off, you'll have a Coptic Ryukyu with all institutions and a sizable power base by the early 16th century. I like this strategy because it's not terribly difficult, and it's rather consistent as far as these things usually go. It puts you in a very strong position, and there are plenty of ways it pays off later in the game. An observation you might have made is that I didn't do a whole lot of conquering in these first years. In fact, it's been almost 6 decades and I've only conquered 13 development worth of provinces. The thing is, you don't need to do a lot of conquering straight away. It's much better if you set up a solid foundation and get your nation in order. My coring costs look like this, and it turns out I spent over 1,000 admin points on stability alone. Conquering comes later, as you'll see in the next video. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. At the end of this series, I'm going to run the time-lapse with a Q&A where I'll answer as many as possible. My name's Raymond, and until next time, thanks for watching.